Last Thursday, I went with my friend Scott to see The Eternals. I saw it in the IMAX theater, the one with the RPG, so the sound was better than seeing it in 3D. And, it was okay. Truth be told, the adventure of me trying to get to the theater to see the movie turned out to be more exciting than the movie itself. And that's a shame. And I'm not going to say it was a bad movie. I'm just going to say that I think that there were too many characters and not enough time for the movie to tell us about all these characters or who they were or what they do. Something I've told a few people is that it wasn't until probably the last 25 minutes of the movie where I remembered suddenly that, that's right, there were some other Eternals in this movie that we saw at the very beginning who are now suddenly back. And that just kind of threw me off. And I started to think about that because I've seen, in the last year, I saw Spider-Man Far From Home that I thought, boy, this doesn't seem right at all. This seems almost like a setup. And then I saw Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, and I actually enjoyed that a lot because it was only basically one guy we had to worry about learning something about. And, is action throughout the entire movie. I'm not going to say that I understood early on everything that was going on, but by the end of the movie, I understood everything except the thing with his sister ending up being kind of a potential bad guy. With, spoiler, it's too late, it's out. But I said potential bad guy, so I don't know the truth of how that's going to go. And it made me decide when I got home that I needed to check out a few other Marvel movies from the past, because when I started to think about it some more, I said, Iron Man might have actually been a setup movie at the time, but as a standalone movie, it was fantastic. And I had no clue that it was going to be a series of movies leading to Infinity War and Endgame. I'm not one of those people who sits there and reads haven't read a comic book since the 70s. And I didn't follow that there was going to be this whole thing where all the movies, merged together. So I went back and I watched Thor. And, I did a video, I think 2 or 3 years ago, where I put the movies in order of what I thought I liked. And I had Infinity War as number 1, which a lot more people had Endgame as number 1. See, I don't always agree with everybody, but we were still close. And I realized that Thor really was not that bad a movie. If you knew that it was going to be following the flow of this MCU universe, then it made a lot more sense. You had Thor out there, kind of this wilding guy who in essence is not even, close to middle age. He may be our version of 20 years old, maybe just out of college, when he's actually 1,500 years old, but he's still basically kind of a kid. And, he was a spoiled kid. And, he was the one who was given all this extra love that he probably didn't really deserve. But you know what? He's supposed to be the next king. So I watched it and I said, well, this is a little more interesting. And you had the Tesseract in that movie, which I had no clue what that was at the time. And then you had Loki kind of setting himself up to be a big deal in the Avengers movie, but we had no clue about that either. So I said, this is actually a lot better movie than what I thought at the time. So I went back to Thor Dark World. And, okay, Thor Dark World is still kind of a bad movie. Yet, we also learned that, in essence, it's based off the idea of there's another Infinity Stone that's out there that I didn't really understand it. Even when Thor mentioned it in Infinity War, all I kept thinking was, no, it was this liquid thing or whatever. I never really thought about it as this stone. It just wasn't something that kind of broke through my mind. And, it had moments, but overall, I was like, no, this movie still doesn't make any sense. Then I decided to go back and watch Guardians of the Galaxy, the original movie, Because when I did the review, I said, I don't remember anything about this movie except the end credit where Baby Groot, once he's been blown up, is dancing to a Jackson 5 song, which is my favorite Jackson 5 song. That's the only thing I could remember of that movie, and I'd seen it a couple of times. So this time I said, I'm going to watch it with a clear eye. And I watched it with a clear eye, and I started to remember certain things, or at least I was remembering certain things that were going on in this movie. And had I remembered the movie better, then I would have realized that they set up the end of the movie where they tell Quill that he's got this different alien DNA in his body that he didn't know anything about. That, well, of course that's going to lead to something else. I just never picked up on that. I never picked up on the different things that all the different characters were doing and who they were. I never picked up on Gamora being Thanos' daughter because truthfully I had no idea who Thanos was. It just didn't pick up on me, in my mind, even though other movies had end credits. Maybe it was just me being naive, maybe it was just me being an old guy, but it just never clicked in my mind. And now I understand that movie better. I remembered the second movie. I thought the second movie was a lot funnier, but this one here, yes, it did have some merit. So it wasn't bad, which I said the first time. It wasn't bad. I just couldn't remember anything about it. And, it turns out, like I said, if you knew the comic books, then you knew it better. And it got me thinking about other things, not just these movies. I'm just using these to lead me into a point, which is that, not all of us knows everything about everything. As a matter of fact, most of the time, there's tons more things we have no idea what they mean or what they're all about than the things we do know. And I used to consider myself very well read, but this was in the days before there was internet. I read a lot of biographies. I read a lot of history books. I read science books. I read books on ethics. But at the time, except for Star Trek books, I never really paid attention to the fact that there were fiction books out there on all kind of genres. My friend Scott, who I mentioned earlier, got me to read Ender's Game, and I loved Ender's Game. But did I follow that up with other fiction afterwards? Nope. I could never get past 6 or 7 pages of Lord of the Rings. I didn't understand that one. I saw the movie Dune. It made no sense to me. Then, well, heck, probably 5 years ago, I finally read the book Dune, and I still didn't understand the movie, but I understood Dune better because the movie made no sense. And, it had Sting in it, but who cares? But, I work in healthcare finance, and most people have no idea what that is. People in healthcare don't really know what that is. A lot of them think, it's just medical billing, but it's not. It encompasses a whole lot of things that unless you're deep into the industry and actually do what I do, you're going to have no idea. And you know who else doesn't have an idea? Most CEOs don't know what it is. Most VPs don't know what it is. Most chief financial officers have no idea what it is, because this isn't anything that you can go to college for, take a course to learn. There is no, I don't know what you call the colleges, like, trade school colleges or whatever. You can go to trade school college to learn how to be a medical biller, but it's usually for physicians. It's not for hospitals. But still, you can't learn all the things I have. There are a couple of manuals out there where, if you go through the manual, you'll learn a few things, but you're not going to learn all of it because you can't learn everything from a manual. You have to actually dig deep and get into it. And it's one of the things I do. And so in that perspective, I understand stuff like that. Whereas, we all drive cars. I know how to drive a car. I don't know where the oil goes in my car. I know how to lift the hood now. I know how to jump my car, if it needs electric shock. But I don't know where to put the window washing mist. I hate owning up to that. But, that's my reality. So I have to go to Goodyear to ask them to do an oil change so that they will fill up the window washer stuff. That's a shame. I don't know how to replace blades. So I either go to Goodyear or I go to AutoZone because they know stuff like that. It helps if you have some kind of idea on how things work for you to understand it and possibly be able to do it. One of the things I'm hoping to do come January is start a membership site on healthcare revenue cycle stuff. Like I said, most of y'all aren't going to know what that is. Probably almost nobody who watches this is going to know what that is. But that's what I'm going to do, because I'm going to target people in the industry who would like to know some of these things, but don't really have a place that they could go to learn it. And it's not going to be cheap. However, even though I know the healthcare side of it, and even though I'm not necessarily bad technologically for online stuff, this membership site thing is kind of freaking me out, because I've heard of membership sites since the mid-2000s, but I've never seen one in action. I never belonged to a membership site. I've got some software, a license for it, but I just have to figure out how to do it, and I have to get the confidence to go ahead and do it. It's going to freak me out a little bit, but I'm going to do it. You know why? Because just because we don't fully understand everything that's going on, if it's something we want to do, something we want to pursue, we can't just always sit there and say, well, I'll wait. You can't always find someone else to do it for you that you can always afford. In my case, I haven't found anyone who could do it, so it's going to have to be me. I can handle the stuff understanding healthcare revenue cycle, but the membership site, I won't know if I can handle it until I actually install it. So that's just one of those weird things that I was thinking about, and it was all because of Eternals. That's a weird connection, isn't it? Anyway, do you guys have things out there where you're unsure how to handle it, and so you don't do it at all, and you're telling yourself, this is something I'd really like to do, and even researching it doesn't help? Let me know your thoughts. My name is Mitch Mitchell. By the way, I haven't said this in the longest time because I always forget, but if you like stuff like this, look back through some of my other videos, think about subscribing. I would not be upset. Trust me. Y'all take care.